Hello and welcome back to another Theory Thursday. Today we are looking at a concept that sometimes sounds like it's unique to guitars or fretted instruments, but it's not. Just the title we use might be unique to fretted instruments. So what the heck am I talking about? Today we are looking at power chords. So that term, power chord, might be exclusive to fretted instruments. I've never seen it used anywhere else, so I'm not entirely sure. But what we're referring to is a fifth chord. For example, if you are on piano or any other chordal instrument, what you'd see in the music is G5 or C5. And we'll go into what all that means, but fretted instruments, at least the guitar, we call them power chords. And that's unique to the guitar, but the idea is not. So that's what we're talking about today. I've got my Seiko 5 SNKL on today. And no tie, as you can see. And I think that's it. As always, if you've been enjoying the tune videos, the theory videos, a like and subscribe is always appreciated, but not necessary. And I think that's all the news I have. So, without further ado, power chords. Let's go. Okay. Power chords. What are they? So, like you heard in the intro, first of all, let's just get this out in the open. They are just fifth chords, what we call fifth chords. So they can be played on any chordal instrument. Any instrument that can play two notes at the same time can play these fifth chords. On guitar, we call them power chords. I'm not really sure the etymology of that and why we call them that, but we do. So they're great for beginners because it only takes two fingers and they're pretty easy to play. They're also very popular in rock and metal and any genre where you can have distortion or not. It seems to be more popular in the distortion genre, but any genre where you're chunking chords, doesn't matter how fast or slow. These chords are great for that. So let's talk about how or what they are. So I'm going to put up a triad here. Now, in basic Western music, chords are made up of multiple notes being played at the same time, at least more than one. That's all it takes to become a chord. Now, we usually think about chords in terms of triads. That's the three notes. And if you look at a scale, you're looking at the first, the third, and the fifth. That makes up a triad. And that's typically what we associate with the word chord because that's most commonly what we're using. And if not, we're usually adding notes on, not taking away. So for example, if I just said a C chord, that would be a C, an E, and a G. Okay, three notes. That's the triad. And then usually if we lean away from that, we're adding notes like C major 7, we'd be adding the 7th. C9, right? You'd be adding the flat 7 and the 9, right? C sharp 13 or whatever. So usually if we're getting away from the triad, we're adding notes on, or the three note system. So this is the opposite of that. This is taking a note away. So when I say a fifth chord, I'm not talking about a 5 chord, right? That's something to distinguish. A 5 chord, if someone were to say play the 5 chord, that'd be you're in a key. The 1 chord is tonic, right? The 5 chord is the dominant. So that's the 5 chord. That's not what this is. This is a fifth chord. So, okay, now I'm going to put a triad up. And let's just use C, for example. C, E, G. This is a typical triad. If someone were to say, play C, this is what they would play. Now, if we take out the third, which is the E, we're left with just C and G. This is a chord. We call this a C5. Okay? What did we do? So we took out the third, and all we have here is a perfect fifth, C to G. That's why we call it a fifth chord, right? Because it's just a fifth apart, C to G. Now, the cool thing about this is without the third, we don't have any major or minor tonality. So what does that mean? The third of a triad, the middle note, is what determines if something is major or minor, right? In layman's terms, if it's happy or sad, right? It's much more complex than that, but it's a great way to think about it, especially if you're starting off. Is this a happy chord or if it's a sad chord? You take that possibility out completely and you're left with just a fifth, and you can play that on any type of C chord, okay? So for example, if you were playing along in a piece of music and you saw C minor come up, but maybe you're not at the point of your guitar journey where you know how to play a C minor, you could play a C power chord and it would sound just fine. This, or if you might, if you're playing with people, a singer or whatever, they might be like, okay, well, where's my minor third? But all in all, you'd get by, right? You can play a C5 over any type of C chord because, the disclaimer there. For example, you wouldn't be able to play it over a C diminished chord because that's a C and a flat 5. You wouldn't be able to play it over a C augmented chord because that's a C and a sharp 5. But any major, any minor chord, you'd be able to play this fifth chord over because all of those chords have those notes in them, a C and a G. And that's it. And if that's all you're playing, what's the diff, right? You're just taking away some of the tones rather than adding wrong notes. So C5, power chords. You're taking away what makes it major or minor, which means you can play it in more places. Now, the downside to all this is it's not a very full chord, right? It's just kind of empty because you have the shell of a chord, but you don't have the meat and potatoes, right? That makes it major or minor. You don't have any of the extensions that add color to it. It's the basic fifth. It's an interval, right? So that's the downfall of power chords. Okay, now, guitar is set up. How do you play them? Guitar is set up in a way that it is really easy to play these fifths and really easy to move them all over the fretboard. So I'll put up a chord chart here, and it's going to look pretty barren because it is. Like I said, you're only playing two notes, right? The root and the fifth of a chord. So let's look at F5 here. This is how it would be written if you were actually looking at a piece of music. You'd see F5. That just means F power chord or an F fifth chord. So you have your first finger. I'm going to grab my guitar here. You won't be able to hear this, but you can at least see it. So we have the chord chart, but first finger on the low E string and your third finger on the A string. So what you're playing here is an F and a C. That's a fifth apart. Okay? So, and the rest of these strings you're not going to worry about. You're not going to play them. Excuse me. So that's why it's so popular in the chunky or chonky, I know people say different things, genres of music where you're just chunking away at the power chords. So that's the easy way to play them is you're just, right, 2 frets away. You have your first finger and your third finger, and you can move this wherever you want, and wherever your first finger is, that's the power chord you're playing. So if I wanted to play an A5, an A power chord, I'd just slide this thing up to the 5th fret, and I'm playing an A and an E. Okay, so that's an A5 power chord. So that's the ease of use on the guitar with the power chords. Now you can find fifths anywhere you want. This is an easy one. Another really easy one is if you have your bass note on the A string. So here's a B flat 5, B flat 5th chord. or B flat power chord. All of those things mean the same thing. First finger, it's just the same shape, but you're moving the whole thing up a string. So first finger is going to be on the A string, first fret. That's your B flat. Your third finger is going to be on the D string, third fret. That's your F. B flat to F is a perfect fifth. Now, if you use this shape on this bass note on the A string, what you want to do with your first finger is just press it up against this bottom E so that it's muted when you're playing. And that way you can still be chunking away with your bottom string muted, so you don't have to worry about not hitting. And same concept, you can move that wherever you want on the fretboard, up and down. So it just pretty much doubles your availability for chords. So you have your F, your G, your A, B, C. Here's your B flat, B, C, D, E, right? So you can keep going. You can actually even keep going up the string. So you can take this, so on and so forth, on the fourth string to the third string. And then it gets a little wonky between the G and B string because they're not the same interval part as the other strings. But so just to recap, power chords. The term might be exclusive to guitars or fretted instruments. The chord, the ideas are not. It's any chordal instrument. And if you're looking at any piece of sheet music, what you're going to see is F5 or whatever chord with a 5 next to it. That's going to be your power chord. Or fifth chord is what other instruments call them. Fifth chords. Distinguished between 5 chords. Not the same thing. On guitar, they're very easy to play. Just 2 frets away, first and your third finger, and you can slide them wherever you want, muting all the other strings. So the pros of this is you can play a fifth chord over any basic major or minor triad. It doesn't matter because you took out the major or minor distinction. You took out the third. You're just playing the first and the fifth of the triad. So that's the pro. The con, of course, is you're only playing 2 notes. So forget about fullness. Forget about color tones. I mean, it's as basic as you can get. You have the shell of a chord. So super fun to play, though. Super fun to play. So that's power chords explained. I think that's all the information I have for you today. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll see you for the next one.